Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the exploration ship Meridian, watching the stars through the main window. The year was 2287, and humanity had been traveling through space for over 100 years, but they were still new compared to other alien races in the galaxy. Jake had brown hair and tired eyes from many years of commanding deep space missions. His ship was exploring the outer edge of known space far from Earth and other human colonies. The Meridian was not the biggest ship in the human fleet, but it was fast and reliable. "Captain, we're getting something strange on the communications array," said Lisa Grant from her station. She was the ship's communications officer, a young woman with short blonde hair who was very good at her job. "It's not coming from any human source." Jake walked over to Lisa's station. The bridge was quiet except for the soft humming of the ship's engines. "What kind of signal?" "It looks like a distress call, but it's in multiple languages. Some I recognize from the alien databases, but others are completely unknown." Lisa's fingers moved quickly over her controls. "The signal is coming from the Kepler 442 system, about 47 light-years from here." Dr. Alan Cross, the ship's language expert, looked up from his workstation. He was an older man with gray hair and thick glasses who had spent his life studying alien languages. "Can you send it to my station?" "I need to run it through the translation programs." Jake nodded. "Do it. How long to decode?" "Give me 20 minutes, Alan said, already starting to work. Jake returned to his captain's chair and waited. The bridge crew continued their normal duties, but everyone was curious about the mysterious signal. It was not every day they received messages from unknown alien species. 20 minutes later, Alan's face went pale. "Captain, you need to hear this." The entire bridge fell silent as Alan played the translated message. A voice clearly in distress spoke through the ship's speakers. "To any civilization receiving this transmission, this is Elder Vextai of the Zelani High Council. The Devourers have found our home system. Our defenses have fallen. Our people are dying. If you possess any compassion, any honor, please do not come to help us. Save yourselves. Remember us, but do not follow our fate. The Devourers consume everything. They learn from every species they destroy. They grow stronger with each world they take. Warn others, stay away. This is our final message." The bridge was quiet for a long moment. Jake felt a cold feeling in his stomach. "Alan, are you sure about the translation?" "Yes, Captain. But there's more. The signal contains coordinates to 12 other star systems. All of them are sending similar distress calls." Nina Blake, the chief science officer, turned from her station. She was a smart woman in her 30s with red hair who rarely showed emotion. But now she looked worried. "Captain, if these coordinates are accurate, we're looking at millions of lives in danger." Jake stood up and walked to the main display screen. The star map showed the location of all 12 systems. They formed a rough line pointing toward human space. "Lisa, send a message to Earth Command. Tell them what we've found. Ask for orders." "Already sent, Captain, but at this distance it will take 6 hours to reach Earth and 6 more hours to get a reply." 12 hours, Jake said quietly. He looked at the coordinates again. According to the timestamps on the distress calls, the attacks had happened over the past 3 days. If they were going to help anyone, they needed to act quickly. "Captain," said Carlos Rivera, the chief engineer. He was a quiet man who usually stayed in the engine room, but the message had brought him to the bridge. "The nearest system is only 8 hours away at maximum speed. We could reach it before we get orders from Earth." Jake knew what Carlos was suggesting. It went against all regulations to enter unknown dangerous space without permission from Earth Command. But people were dying while they waited for orders. "Nina, what do we know about these Devourers?" Nina checked her database. "Nothing in our records. No previous contact with any species by that name. But based on the message, they seem to be a hostile force that attacks and destroys other civilizations." "Captain," Alan said, "there's something else. The language patterns in these messages suggest that the Devourers have been active for a long time. Some of these alien languages are very old. This might not be a recent threat." Jake walked back to his chair and sat down. He looked around at his crew. These were good people who had followed him on many dangerous missions. They trusted his judgment, and he trusted theirs. "Options?" he asked. "We could wait for orders from Earth," Lisa suggested, but her voice showed she did not like this option. "We could investigate the nearest system," Carlos said. "Maybe the attack is over and there are survivors who need help." "Or we could be flying into a trap," Nina added. "We don't know anything about these Devourers or their capabilities. Jake was quiet for a moment. He thought about the fear in the alien voice, the desperation in the message. 12 systems under attack, millions of lives at stake, and somewhere out there, these devourers were getting stronger with each world they destroyed. Alan, how long would it take to send a warning message to all known human colonies and allied systems? About 2 hours to prepare and transmit to all major systems. Do it. Include everything we know about the devourers and these coordinates. Make sure Earth Command gets a priority copy. Jake stood up again. Carlos, prepare the engines for maximum speed. Nina, I want you to scan every piece of data we have about these systems. Look for anything that might tell us what we're facing. Captain, Lisa said quietly. Are we really going to investigate? Jake looked at the star map one more time. Somewhere out there, people were dying. Maybe they were already dead. Maybe this was a trap. Maybe they would never come home. But Jake knew that some things were more important than following orders or staying safe. Set course for the nearest system. Maximum speed. Captain, Nina said, Earth Command will not be happy about this. Jake smiled grimly. Then we better make sure we come back with good intelligence to justify the risk. Everyone prepare for the unknown. We're about to find out what these devourers are capable of. The Meridian turned toward the unknown system and accelerated into hyperspace. Behind them, Earth was still 12 hours away from even knowing about the threat. Ahead of them, something waited in the darkness between the stars, something that had destroyed civilizations and was now coming toward human space. Jake Morrison did not know it yet, but his decision to answer that distress call would change the fate of humanity forever. The Meridian dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Zelani system. What Jake Morrison saw through the main window made his blood run cold. Space was filled with the wreckage of a once great civilization. Massive alien ships drifted powerless, their hulls torn open like tin cans. Some of the metal looked melted, but in strange patterns that seemed almost alive. Other ships had holes that went clean through them, as if something had eaten through the armor. My God, whispered Lisa Grant from her station. There must be hundreds of ships out there. Nina Blake was scanning the wreckage with the ship's sensors. Captain, I'm reading some very unusual energy signatures from these hull breaches. The damage patterns don't match any known weapons. Any survivors? Jake asked. I'm detecting one large structure still powered, Lisa reported. It looks like a space station in orbit around the fourth planet. There are life signs, but much fewer than the station was designed to hold. Jake stared at the destruction around them. Each of those ships had held thousands of lives. Families, children, people with hopes and dreams just like humans. Now they were all gone. Carlos, take us to that station. Slowly. Keep the engines ready for emergency jump. As the Meridian moved through the ship graveyard, the crew could see more details of the destruction. Some of the alien vessels were enormous, much larger than anything humanity had ever built. They had clearly been powerful warships with advanced weapons, but something had torn through them like they were made of paper. Captain, Nina said, her voice tight with worry, I'm detecting organic residue on many of these hulls. It's almost like something was eating the ships themselves. The space station was a beautiful structure that looked like a crystal flower floating in space, but as they got closer, they could see that large sections had been damaged. The outer petals of the station were dark and lifeless. Incoming transmission from the station, Lisa announced. The main screen flickered and showed an alien face. The creature had large blue eyes, pale skin, and features that were almost human but not quite. When it spoke, the translation system converted its words to English. Unknown vessel, I am Elder Vextai of the Zelani High Council. Please identify yourself. Are you here to help or to finish what the devourers started? Jake stepped forward. Elder Vextai, I am Captain Jake Morrison of the human vessel Meridian. We received your distress call and came to offer assistance. The alien's eyes widened with surprise. Humans. We have heard of your species but never made contact. You should not have come. The devourers may return. We're here now, Jake said simply. Do you need medical assistance? Can we help evacuate survivors? Elder Vextai was quiet for a moment. There are so few of us left. This station once held 400,000 of my people. Now we are less than 3,000. Jake felt sick. An entire civilization reduced to almost nothing. We have medical facilities. Our doctor can help with any injuries. Your kindness honors you, Captain Morrison. But first you must understand what you face. The devourers are not like other enemies. They do not simply kill and move on. They consume entire civilizations and become stronger. Jake ordered his team to prepare for boarding the station. Dr. Ben Carter, the ship's medical officer, gathered his supplies. Carter was a calm man who had seen many emergencies, but even he looked shaken by the destruction around them. Ambassador Kelsey Hayes led the boarding party. She was humanity's first official ambassador to alien species, a job that had been mostly ceremonial until now. Hayes was a diplomatic woman who spoke several alien languages, but nothing had prepared her for this. The docking bay of the Zalani station was huge, but nearly empty. Only a few small ships remained where once there had been hundreds. The survivors who met them looked tired and scared. Many had injuries that were slowly healing. Elder Vextai greeted them personally. He was tall and thin with long fingers and sad eyes. "Welcome to what remains of our world, Ambassador Hayes. I wish we could meet under better circumstances." "Tell us about the Devourers," Hayes said gently. "What exactly are they?" Vextai led them through the station corridors. The walls showed beautiful artwork and plants that somehow survived in artificial light, but many sections were sealed off where the station had been damaged. "The Devourers are biological weapons created by an ancient race," Vextai explained, "but they grew beyond their creator's control and consumed them too. They do not simply kill their enemies. They absorb the knowledge and abilities of every species they destroy." Dr. Carter was examining some of the wounded Zalani. "Elder Vextai, some of these injuries are very strange. It looks like something was trying to connect with their nervous systems." "Yes, Doctor. The Devourers do not just take our technology and ships. They harvest our memories, our knowledge, our very thoughts. Each species they consume makes them smarter and more dangerous." Hayes felt a chill run down her spine. "How many species have they destroyed?" "According to our records, 47 different civilizations across 3 galaxy sectors. Each one had unique abilities and knowledge. The Devourers now possess all of that combined wisdom." Nina Blake was studying the station's computer systems with the help of Zalani technicians. The data she found was terrifying. Star maps showing the path of destruction across multiple star systems. Records of battles where entire fleets had been destroyed in hours. "Captain," Nina called over the radio, "you need to see this. The Devourers' path of conquest is heading directly toward human space. At their current rate of advance, they'll reach our outer colonies in about 18 months. Jake felt his heart sink. 18 months to prepare for an enemy that had destroyed 47 other civilizations. An enemy that learned and adapted with each victory. "Elder Vextai, how do they fight? What are their weapons like?" The alien elder led them to a viewing chamber where they could see the wreckage field outside. "They do not use weapons as you understand them. The Devourers themselves are the weapons, living ships that can change and adapt during battle. They study your tactics and then counter them within minutes." "Have any species ever defeated them?" Hayes asked. "None. The closest anyone came was the Cortex Imperium. They held out for 3 years using superior technology, but in the end, the Devourers learned everything the Cortex knew and turned their own weapons against them." Dr. Carter finished his examination of the survivors. Many had strange scars where something had tried to connect with their nervous systems. "Elder Vextai, did any of your people survive the neural harvesting process?" "A few, but they were never the same afterward. The Devourers left part of themselves behind, trying to understand how our minds work." Suddenly alarms began sounding throughout the station. Lisa's voice came over the radio from the Meridian. "Captain, long-range sensors are detecting multiple ships approaching the system. The energy signatures match what we've seen from the Devourer damage." Jake's blood went cold. "How many ships?" "At least 6, possibly more." "They'll be here in 20 minutes. Elder Vextai looked at Jake with sad but understanding eyes. "You must go, Captain Morrison. Take what information you can and warn your people. Do not let the Devourers add human knowledge to their collection." "What about your survivors?" "Our fastest ship can carry perhaps 50 people. The rest of us are too weak to travel far. We will stay and face our fate." Jake made a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life. "Ambassador Hayes, get back to the ship with as many survivors as we can carry. Nina, download everything you can from their computers. We leave in 10 minutes. As the Meridian prepared to jump to hyperspace, Jake watched the Zalani station grow smaller in the distance. Elder Vextai and thousands of survivors were still there, waiting for the Devourers to return and finish what they had started. "Captain," Lisa said quietly, "the Devourer ships are entering the system now. Jump to hyperspace. Get us home." As the stars blurred around them, Jake realized that by answering the distress call, they might have doomed humanity. The Devourers would now know that humans existed. They would study the Meridian's energy signature and learn how to track human ships. The war for humanity's survival had already begun. The Meridian arrived at Earth 3 days later. Captain Jake Morrison had sent detailed reports ahead, but nothing could have prepared Earth's leaders for what they were about to face. Admiral Grace Thompson stood in the main briefing room of Earth Defense Command, watching the holographic display that showed the Devourer threat. She was a strong woman who had commanded fleets in several small wars, but this was unlike anything humanity had ever faced. 47 civilizations, she said quietly, reading the report again. Some of them had technology far more advanced than ours. President Ryan Clark sat at the head of the conference table, surrounded by military leaders and scientists. He was a practical man who usually made decisions based on facts and logic, but the facts in this case were terrifying. Dr. Cross, the president said, "Tell me about these survivors we rescued." Alan Cross stood up, looking tired from days of intensive work with the Zalani refugees. "Sir, we have 53 Zalani survivors aboard various ships in Earth orbit. Elder Vextai is their leader, and he's been very helpful in sharing information about the Devourers." "And what has he told us?" "The Devourers are not just conquerors, sir. They're collectors. Each species they destroy adds new knowledge and abilities to their collective consciousness. They've been doing this for thousands of years." Nina Blake activated another holographic display, showing the path of Devourer conquest across the galaxy. "Mr. President, based on their pattern of movement, they'll reach our outer colonies in approximately 18 months. Our core systems, including Earth, would be attacked within 2 years. Admiral Thompson leaned forward. "What are our options?" "We could evacuate the outer colonies and try to defend the core systems," suggested General Pete Johnson, head of ground forces. "Create a strong defensive line around Earth and Mars." "That won't work," said Dr. Cross. "Elder Vextai showed us records of 6 different species that tried similar strategies. The Devourers just grew stronger by consuming the abandoned colonies, then overwhelmed the defensive lines." President Clark was quiet for a moment. "What about running? Could we evacuate Earth and find somewhere else to settle? Where would we go?" asked Admiral Thompson. "The Devourers have consumed everything in 3 galaxy sectors. Even if we could move our entire population, they would eventually find us." Dr. Nina Blake had been studying the technical data from the Zalani systems. "Sir, there might be another option. While analyzing the Devourer technology, I found something interesting. They're incredibly good at adapting to conventional military tactics and advanced technology, but there's no record of them ever facing a species like humanity." "What do you mean?" President Clark asked. "Every species the Devourers have encountered followed logical military doctrine. They used their best weapons, employed standard tactics, and tried to outfight the enemy with superior force. But humans have something the other species didn't, which is, we're unpredictable. We use psychological warfare. We think creatively under pressure. Other species call it our beautiful madness, our ability to do things that don't make logical sense but somehow work." Admiral Thompson looked skeptical. "You're suggesting we fight creatures that destroyed advanced civilizations by being crazy?" "Not crazy," Nina corrected. "Creatively chaotic. The Devourers adapt by studying and copying what they face, but you can't easily study or copy something that doesn't follow patterns." At that moment, Ambassador Kelsey Hayes entered the briefing room with Elder Vextai. The Zalani leader looked around at the human leaders with his large, sad eyes. "Elder Vextai," President Clark said, "we're grateful for the information you've shared, but we need to know, is there any way to defeat the Devourers?" The alien was quiet for a long moment. "In all the records of 47 civilizations, no one has ever truly defeated them. But," he paused, looking directly at the president, "no one has ever tried what Dr. Blake suggests. Every species we know fought them the same way, with logic, with their best technology, with conventional military thinking. But you think humans might be different?" "Humans are the only species we've encountered that regularly does things that make no logical sense, but somehow achieve positive results. You call it creativity, humor, art. We call it controlled chaos." Lieutenant Colonel Amy Foster, who had been quiet during the meeting, finally spoke up. "Elder Vextai, would your people be willing to join us in a fight against the Devourers?" "We have nothing left to lose," the alien replied. Our homeworld is gone. Our civilization is destroyed. If there's even a small chance of stopping the devourers, we will help. President Clark stood up. How many other refugee species are out there? 12 that we know of, Elder Vextai answered. Small groups of survivors hiding in remote systems. Most have given up hope. Dr. Cross, how long would it take to contact these other refugee groups and convince them to join us? With Elder Vextai's help, maybe 3 months to locate them all and establish communication. Admiral Thompson was studying the star maps. If we're going to do this, we need to choose our battlefield carefully. Somewhere far enough from Earth to protect our core systems, but close enough to supply a large fleet. The Ross 128 system, suggested Nina Blake. It's roughly halfway between Earth and the Devourer Advance. Multiple planets for resources and good defensive positions. President Clark made his decision. Admiral Thompson, you have 6 months to prepare a joint fleet with these refugee species. Dr. Blake, I want you to work with our best tactical minds to develop strategies based on this creative chaos approach. Colonel Foster, coordinate with Elder Vextai to contact the other survivor groups. Sir, Admiral Thompson said, we'll be committing almost our entire fleet to this battle. If we lose, humanity dies anyway, the President replied. At least this way we go down fighting and maybe give other species a chance to survive. Over the following weeks, word spread through human space about the coming war. Engineers worked day and night to build new ships and weapons. Scientists studied devourer technology looking for weaknesses. Soldiers trained for a type of warfare they had never imagined. Dr. Ben Carter led a team of medical researchers who made a surprising discovery. Human brain patterns were slightly different from other species, making them more resistant to devour neural harvesting attempts. It wasn't complete immunity, but it was better than nothing. Commander Kate Wilson, one of humanity's best tactical minds, developed something called Project Chaos Theory. Instead of following standard military doctrine, human forces would deliberately use tactics that seemed irrational, suicidal, or just plain weird. The idea, she explained to her staff, is that if we can't predict what we're going to do, then the devourers can't predict it either. Meanwhile, Elder Vextai and Dr. Cross succeeded in contacting 11 other refugee species. Most were small groups of survivors with only a few ships each, but they brought knowledge and technology from their lost civilizations. The Cortex refugees brought advanced shield technology. The Moralian survivors contributed powerful energy weapons. The small group of Thessian scouts provided stealth systems that could hide entire fleets. As the Alliance fleet assembled at Ross 128, it became clear that this would be the largest gathering of different species in galactic history. Humans, Zalani, Cortex, Moralians, Thessians, and 8 other races working together against a common enemy. But Elder Vextai privately worried about what they were attempting. He had seen the Devourers destroy civilizations with millions of ships and billions of warriors. Their combined Alliance fleet had fewer than 3,000 vessels. Ambassador Hayes, he said during one of their planning sessions, you understand that we are asking your species to sacrifice themselves for a plan that has almost no chance of success? Hayes smiled sadly. Elder Vextai, humans have a saying, better to die on your feet than live on your knees. If the Devourers are coming for us anyway, we'd rather go down fighting alongside friends. The alien elder felt something he had not experienced since his homeworld fell. Hope. Not hope for victory, because that still seemed impossible, but hope that maybe, just maybe, this strange alliance of desperate species might accomplish what no one had ever done before. The Devourers were coming, and for the first time in galactic history, someone was going to fight them with weapons they had never faced. Creativity, chaos, and the beautiful madness of humanity. The Ross 128 system became the largest military staging area in galactic history. Ships from 12 different species filled the space around the system's planets, preparing for a battle that would determine the fate of countless worlds. Admiral Grace Thompson stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Terra Nova, watching the diverse fleet assemble. Human destroyers flew alongside Zalani crystal ships. Cortex heavy cruisers shared space with tiny Moralian scouts. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Admiral, called Chief Tactical Officer Pete Johnson, the final refugee ship has arrived. That's all of them, Thompson nodded. The Alliance fleet numbered 2,047 ships total. It sounded impressive until you remembered that the Devourers had destroyed fleets 10 times that size. What's our status on the special projects? Commander Kate Wilson approached with a tablet full of data. She had been working with teams from every species to develop their unconventional battle plans. Project Chaos Theory is ready. We have 17 different battle scenarios, each designed to be completely unpredictable. Give me an example. Scenario 7 involves our fastest ships appearing to retreat in panic, leading the Devourers into what looks like a trap. But then the trap ships actually retreat too, leaving the Devourers confused about who's chasing whom. Thompson smiled grimly. And you think this will work? Admiral, conventional tactics have failed 47 times. At this point, confusion might be our best weapon. Dr. Nina Blake was in the Fleet's Science Command Center, studying the latest intelligence about Devourer capabilities. The data was terrifying. Ships that could change their shape during battle, weapons that adapted to whatever defenses they faced, and most frightening of all, a collective intelligence that learned from every encounter. Dr. Blake called one of her assistants. We're getting some interesting readings from the Thessian stealth ships. Their technology might let us surprise the Devourers. How so? The Thessian stealth fields don't just hide ships from sensors. They create false readings. We could make one ship look like 100 or 100 ships look like one. Blake felt a spark of hope. Can we combine that with human psychological warfare tactics? Already working on it. Commander Wilson wants to try broadcasting fake retreat signals while actually advancing, and fake advance signals while retreating. Meanwhile, Dr. Ben Carter was working with medical teams from all the Alliance species. His research into human resistance to Devourer neural harvesting had led to an important discovery. The key, he explained to Elder Vextai, is that human brains are naturally chaotic. Our thoughts jump around randomly. We dream in symbols, we make emotional decisions that don't follow logic. The Devourers have trouble reading minds that don't think in straight lines. Can this resistance be shared with other species? We're working on neural interface devices that might help. It won't make other species immune like humans, but it could slow down the harvesting process. Elder Vextai felt grateful for the hope these humans offered, but he also felt guilty. There was something he had not told them about why the Zilani had sent that original distress call, something that might change how they felt about this alliance. Captain Lisa Grant, now commanding the upgraded communications ship Hermes, was coordinating with all the different species in the fleet. The translation systems were working overtime to handle 12 different languages during combat planning. Captain Grant, called her communications officer, were receiving a priority message from the outer sensor network. Lisa felt her heart skip. Is it them? Yes, ma'am. Devourer ships detected at the edge of the system. Estimated arrival in 6 hours. Lisa immediately sent the alert to all ships in the fleet. This was it. After months of planning and preparation, they were about to face an enemy that had never been defeated. Admiral Thompson called an emergency meeting of all fleet commanders. The main briefing room of the Terra Nova was crowded with representatives from every species. Some looked confident, others worried, but all of them were determined. How many ships? Thompson asked. Long-range sensors count over 2,000 Devourer vessels, reported the sensor chief. That's about what we expected based on their previous attacks. Commander Wilson stood up. All ships are ready for Chaos Theory deployment. We've practiced these maneuvers for weeks. Elder Vextai, Thompson said. Any last advice about fighting the Devourers? The Zilani leader was quiet for a moment. Admiral, there is something I must tell you. Something about why we sent that distress call. Everyone in the room turned to look at him. Thompson felt a cold sensation in her stomach. What do you mean? The distress call was not just a cry for help. It was also a test. My people had been studying human transmissions for years. We knew that humans were different from other species. More creative, more willing to take risks, more chaotic in their thinking. You're saying you deliberately contacted us? Yes. We hoped that if any species could disrupt the Devourer adaptation patterns, it would be humanity. The distress call was designed to bring you into this war. The room was silent for a long moment. Thompson felt angry and betrayed, but also strangely honored. So we were manipulated into this fight. You were invited, Elder Vextai corrected. We could not force you to come. We could only hope that your nature would compel you to help. Captain Jake Morrison, who had been quiet during the meeting, finally spoke. Elder Vextai, would you have done the same thing if you knew it might lead to humanity's destruction? Captain Morrison, 47 civilizations have already been destroyed. If we do nothing, 48 will follow, then 49, then 50. The Devourers will not stop until they have consumed every thinking species in the galaxy. At least this way there is a chance. Thompson looked around the room at the faces of beings from 12 different worlds. Well, we're here now, and we're going to make the best of it. Admiral, came a voice over the communication system. Devourer fleet is 4 hours out and closing fast. Thompson stood up. All commanders to your ships. Activate chaos theory protocols. Remember, our goal is not just to win this battle, but to survive long enough to show the galaxy that the Devourers can be fought. As the meeting broke up, Elder Vextai approached Thompson privately. Admiral, there is one more thing you should know. The Devourers are not just interested in conquering humanity now. You have become a puzzle they need to solve. They will focus their attention on capturing human minds to understand how you think. Meaning this battle will determine not just whether humanity survives, but whether the Devourers gain the ability to think like humans. If they capture enough of your people and learn to be creative and chaotic like you, they will become unstoppable. Thompson felt the weight of the galaxy on her shoulders. No pressure, right? 2 hours later, the Devourer fleet appeared on the edge of the Ross 128 system. Through the long-range sensors, they looked like a swarm of insects made of metal and flesh, ships that changed shape as they moved, adapting their forms for maximum efficiency. But Admiral Thompson had one advantage the previous 47 civilizations had not possessed. She had humans, and humans were about to show the galaxy what beautiful madness really meant. All ships, she broadcast to the Alliance fleet, remember that we are not here to fight logically. We are here to fight like humans. Confused, scared, angry, hopeful, and completely unpredictable. Make them wonder what the hell we're thinking. The Terra Nova led the fleet toward the approaching swarm of Devourer ships. Behind them came vessels from 12 different species, all following battle plans that made no logical sense but felt somehow right. The greatest battle in galactic history was about to begin. The Battle of Ross 128 began in the most unusual way in galactic military history. Instead of standard battle formations or threatening messages, the human fleet opened communications with the Devourer Collective and began broadcasting Earth's greatest hits. Admiral Grace, Thompson watched from the bridge of the Terra Nova as her communications officer transmitted everything from classical symphonies to rock music, from children's lullabies to comedy shows. The reaction from the Devourer fleet was immediate and unexpected. They stopped advancing. Admiral, reported the sensor chief, the Devourer ships have halted their approach. They appear to be analyzing the transmissions. Commander Kate Wilson smiled grimly. First rule of chaos theory, start with something they've never encountered before. The Devourer collective consciousness was indeed struggling. For thousands of years they had faced threats, demands, pleas for mercy, and battle cries, but never had an enemy opened combat by broadcasting something called the Best of Earth Jazz Collection, followed by a comedian explaining why humans find certain things funny. Elder Vextai, aboard the Zalani command ship, watched in amazement. In all the records of 47 civilizations, I have never seen the Devourers hesitate like this. The hesitation lasted exactly 4 minutes and 37 seconds. Then the Devourer fleet resumed its advance, but their formation had changed. Instead of their usual efficient attack pattern, they approached cautiously, as if expecting another surprise. All ships, Admiral Thompson broadcast, execute Chaos Protocol 1. What happened next would be studied by military historians for centuries. The human fleet appeared to panic. Ships broke formation and scattered in random directions. Some vessels broadcast emergency signals claiming their engines had failed. Others sent messages saying they were surrendering. The Devourer ships, trained by the conquest of 47 civilizations, moved to surround the fleeing humans. This was a pattern they recognized, a broken enemy attempting to escape. But then the fleeing human ships suddenly turned and attacked. Ships that had claimed engine failure moved faster than anything in the Devourer databases. Vessels broadcasting surrender opened fire with weapons that shouldn't have existed according to their fake distress signals. Captain Lisa Grant, commanding the Hermes, led a squadron of damaged ships in a strike against the Devourer left flank. All ships remember, we're not retreating. We're advancing in a different direction. The Thessian stealth ships activated their illusion technology. making the Alliance fleet appear 3 times larger than it actually was. Suddenly, the Devourers found themselves facing what looked like 8,000 ships instead of 2,800. Dr. Nina Blake, monitoring the battle from the Science Command Center, saw something remarkable in the sensor data. Admiral, the Devourer ships are showing signs of confusion. Their adaptation protocols are cycling rapidly, trying to counter tactics they can't categorize. The battle raged for 6 hours. The Alliance fleet used 17 different chaos theory scenarios, sometimes switching between them in the middle of combat. Ships that should have been destroyed kept fighting with jury-rigged repairs that violated every safety protocol. Human crews performed maintenance miracles that the Devourers' databases said were impossible. Commander Pete Johnson led a squadron of heavy cruisers in what he called the Stupid Brave maneuver, flying directly at Devourer capital ships while broadcasting ancient human war songs. The psychological effect on both sides was electric. The Alliance crews fought with desperate courage while the Devourers struggled to understand enemies who sang while attacking. But the beautiful madness came at a terrible cost. Despite their confusion, the Devourers were still incredibly powerful. Alliance ships died by the dozen, consumed by weapons that turned matter itself against them. The Meridian, Captain Jake Morrison's original ship, was destroyed when it rammed a Devourer bioship to save a transport full of refugees. Morrison himself died in the explosion, but not before broadcasting one final message: for everyone we couldn't save. Dr. Ben Carter's medical ship was overrun while trying to rescue survivors from a disabled Cortex cruiser. His last transmission was a warning about new Devourer tactics that targeted medical personnel specifically. As the battle reached its climax, Admiral Thompson made a decision that would define humanity's legacy. Instead of trying to win through superior firepower, she ordered the fleet to attempt something no species had ever tried before. All ships, execute final protocol, broadcast code Omega. Elder Vextai didn't understand what code Omega meant until he saw it happening. The entire human fleet began transmitting their personal memories directly to the Devourer collective consciousness. Not military intelligence or technological data, but pure human experience. The Devourers found themselves flooded with human emotions, dreams, fears, and hopes. They experienced what it was like to fall in love, to laugh at a joke, to cry at a sunset, to hope for something better tomorrow. The effect was catastrophic for the collective consciousness. The Devourers had evolved to process and categorize knowledge, but human emotions didn't fit into any category. Joy and sorrow existed simultaneously, love and fear intertwined. Logic and chaos danced together in patterns that couldn't be analyzed or replicated. "Admiral," called the communications officer, "the Devourer fleet is withdrawing." Thompson could hardly believe it. For the first time in galactic history, the Devourers were retreating from a battle they hadn't won. But the victory was bittersweet. Of the 2,047 ships that had entered the battle, only 1203 remained functional. Thousands of brave beings from 12 different species had died to achieve what everyone thought was impossible. In the weeks that followed, reports came in from across the galaxy. Other Devourer fleets had stopped their advances. Some were withdrawing to their home territories. The collective consciousness was struggling to process the human emotional data it had absorbed. Elder Vextai found Admiral Thompson in the medical bay of the Terra Nova, where she was recovering from injuries sustained when her bridge was damaged. "Admiral, we have received word from survivor groups across the galaxy. Species that had been in hiding for decades are emerging. Some are even beginning to fight back against isolated Devourer forces." Thompson smiled weakly. "So it worked?" "More than worked. You have given the galaxy hope for the first time in centuries, but the Devourers have not been destroyed. They have been changed. Our intelligence suggests that they are trying to understand human emotions and creativity. If they succeed, they may become more dangerous than ever." Thompson was quiet for a moment. "Then we'll have to stay vigilant. Keep being unpredictable. Keep being human." 6 months after the Battle of Ross 128, the Alliance had evolved into something unprecedented. A permanent galactic council where humans served as both military advisors and cultural ambassadors. Their role was to teach other species the art of creative thinking and adaptive strategies. Commander Wilson established the Academy of Chaos Theory on Mars, where beings from dozens of species came to learn human-style tactics. The curriculum included classes in improvisation, creative problem solving, and something called productive confusion management. Dr. Blake's research into devourer technology led to new defensive systems that could adapt in real time to changing threats. But more importantly, her work helped other species develop their own capacity for creative thinking. The devourers still existed, but they were no longer the unstoppable force they had once been. Human influence had introduced an element of chaos into their collective consciousness that they couldn't fully control or eliminate. Elder Vex Tai, now serving as the first speaker for refugee rights in the Galactic Council, often reflected on the SOS call that had started it all. "We called for rescue," he would say, "but we received something far more valuable. We received revolution." But perhaps the most significant change was in humanity itself. The species that had once been young explorers on the galactic stage had become something else entirely. The guardians of chaos, the keepers of creativity, the eternal wild card in the cosmic game. They had answered a distress call and found their destiny, not as conquerors or victims, but as the living reminder that the universe would always be a place where the impossible could happen, where creativity could triumph over logic, and where hope could survive even in the darkest times. The SOS call had indeed summoned humanity and sealed their fate. But their fate was not destruction. It was transformation into something the galaxy had never seen before and would never forget. And somewhere in the depths of space, the devourers continued to struggle with a question they had never faced before. What do you do with an enemy that fights with love? Hope and the beautiful madness of dreams? The answer, they were learning, was that you become something new yourself. Whether that would make them more dangerous or more human remained to be seen. But one thing was certain, the galaxy would never be the same again.